Welcome to the show. Braylon Mullins, 5-star guard, makes the biggest decision of his basketball life. Will he choose UConn or stay home with the Hoosiers? You're locked on.
You are Locked On UConn, your daily podcast on the UConn Huskies, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks for making Locked On UConn this your first listen every day. This is a special episode of Locked On UConn because we're doing a crossover with Locked On Hoosiers. We're going to bring in Jacob Goins here in a second. Before we dive into today's show, if you haven't already subscribed to Locked On UConn or Locked On Hoosiers, do it now. We really appreciate that support. On our side, we donate 10% of our funds to UConn's NIL initiatives. We also are donating 10% to Husky Ticket Project. It helps bring kids who are in underserved communities to UConn basketball, women's basketball, and football games all through the year. So thank you for making Locked On UConn your first listen every day. And if you're a Locked On Hoosiers fan, I'm sure you make that your first listen every day. Let's welcome into the program my fellow Locked On host, Jacob Goins. Let's bring him in now. I'm going to unmute his mic. Absolutely. Jacob, I'm going to turn off my tag here because I don't need to be larger than you in terms of this. I really appreciate you jumping on this crossover of the Braylon Mullins commitment. I have my second screen over here with Braylon's announcement that's about to begin in about 9 minutes. So before I even ask you a question, it's UConn. Now the top three is UConn, IU, and UNC. And we didn't invite Isaac on the show today.
I know that was rude of us. Yeah.
But it's also for obvious reasons because anybody that's on the live stream right now understands that how this works. Kids make decisions. They stack rank the schools. It truly has always been for the last month or so between Indiana and UConn. Would you agree?
Absolutely. And it's something I've said on Locked On Hoosiers for weeks now since he cut it down to his final three, and we got a date and we found out it was going to be on 247 and all that. So we've been talking about it just as much as you guys have for quite some time. And man, I'm excited to be here, whether it goes our way or not. I'm sure you can speak to this, Mark. It's been a fun recruitment. I mean, this has been a battle in this thing, and it's going to go to one of us. I just don't think North Carolina made the final turn here. But it's been a really fun recruitment to cover because of how talented Braylon Mullins is. I've continued to describe him as program changing. I think he's that good, and to see him grow in the jump that he took in the last 12 months, 6 months even, is truly remarkable.
Well, I'd be remiss to say that you are 100% right. I won't lie to you guys because I have your guys on the show. I have my fans coming on. I was late to the party on Braylon, 100%, because UConn was all in on Malik Thomas. They were in on some other guys, and I stumbled upon Braylon through a fellow Hoosier that I will remain nameless. And it just became a thing where I was just like, holy this kid's incredible. And so I was just like, if UConn can get this kid, this is a kid, because it felt to me, if you start to look at the way I start looking at recruiting, it's not who I want. I look at it through the lens of who Danny Hurley wants. And so when I do that, I start to go, does he defend? Yes. Can he shoot? Yes. Does he have a high IQ? Yes. Is he athletic? Yes. All of these things. Does he like competition? Does he feel like a guy who, if Danny Hurley presses him, he's going to back down or he's going to rise to the occasion? And all these questions were answered when I started looking at this film, ask questions, recruiting guys, scouts, everything. And I'm like literally getting chills because it's just something that I was like, this kid has to be a UConn guy. And I know you guys feel the same way. So to me, it's so imperative that whichever school wins this battle, it's a blow to the other team. And I'm not trying to say that because I think UConn's the favorite, but it's the truth. Because if we turn this stream on here in 5 minutes and Braylon puts down his jacket or he puts on a hat and it's an Indiana hat, I'll be stunned, but I'll also be happy for the kid because, as I've told anybody that does this, I just want this kid to go wherever he feels is the most comfortable for him and is going to get him to the next level, because he is a transcendent player that is going to be an NBA player, an NBA lottery pick, whether he picks Indiana or UConn. And that's just my opinion.
And I feel like that's a lost not a lost art, but a lost mindset maybe, is we get so caught up as fans and as, young adults and even, older adults too. And it's like, man, we're talking about a 17, 18, 19-year-old kid who's trying to make his future. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
it's so crazy when you just sit back for a second and you're like, man, we're talking about a kid that's playing high school basketball and talking about whether he's going to pick my school or your school or some other school. And so, look, I hope he picks Indiana. And I do think he could be the next great guard here in Bloomington. But wherever he goes, he's going to be in a good situation, whether it's UConn, whether it's Indiana, heck, whether he was going to North Carolina, like he was going
Right.
to really good spot. And you may have been late to jump on it, but I think UConn was late to get in on it.
I do too. I agree.
It was okay, let's see what he's going to be. Let's see if he becomes what we think he can be. And then bam, when he did, UConn was like, all right, now we go. And I'll say this, credit to Dan Hurley and that program. They're at the status, Mark, where they can hold off for a little bit and they can say, well, before we invest all of our time and money and whatever, let's see if he pans out. Now that we see he's going to be good, all right, now let's jump on it and see what happens. And again, UConn's at the spot to be able to do that with the recent success. So it's, again, what a heck of a recruitment this has been. No matter where he goes, it's been a lot of fun to cover it. And I hope the best for Braylon. I really do, no matter where he ends up.
Absolutely. And I'm going to put something up from the chat because I have to give one of our sponsors, and it's a Locked On sponsor. So I'm not sure if Indiana has it too, but let's just throw it. This is a home field jacket that it's one of our sponsors.
That's sweet. Yeah.
It's a classic. I think it's called Classic Pullover. Check it out on Home Field. If you're a UConn guy, use my promo code Locked or UConn24. All caps UConn24. I'll put it in the chat if you guys want to look it up. I always got to rep Home Field. I did that wrong, but they are one of my favorite sponsors. They hook us up. And it is a phenomenal jacket. I just got it like 4 or 5 days ago. So
that thing's sweet. It's really sweet. I don't think Home Field has any Indiana basketball stuff yet, but they did just release a Kurt Signetti football shirt, so people can go check that out if they want to in terms of Indiana. Because I know you've heard all the football hype that we got going on here in Bloomington. As much fun as basketball is, we do have football. So yeah, Home Field just released a Kurt Signetti t-shirt for fans that are interested.
Absolutely. I'm going to get to, we have about 2 minutes and 18 seconds and counting before the live stream of Braylon comes up on the 247 YouTube channel. So we're going to get you guys abreast of when he decides. People are asking some questions. I think, let me get to this, but before we get to that, where do you think, we're assuming, listen, I think we are assuming that UConn's the favorite here. Where do you think that went awry? Like, do you can pinpoint a moment? Did you hear anything, Jacob? I'm just curious from your side because we've been texting behind the scenes for a couple of days, but we really haven't talked about this recruitment together other than this show right now.
I just think UConn, again, I think they held off until they realized that Braylon is a really good player because of the jump that he took. I mean, we're talking about a kid that was in the hundreds of rankings and is now a top 30, top 20, top 15 player in America. And so I think Indiana didn't do anything wrong if they miss out on him. I just think UConn came in and basically just did what UConn does. And they said, look, here's what we have, here's what we can offer, and we think we can be the best fit for you. And so if he does pick UConn, I think it's because Dan Hurley's a great coach. I think it's because NIL. I don't think NIL is a huge difference maker in this recruitment. I think that's a common thing nowadays, right, Mark, with, they're paying him more money. That's why he's going there. They're paying him more millions of dollars. I just don't think that's the problem here at all. I really do think this comes down to what coach do you want to play for? What system do you want to be in? And what town do you want to be in? I think that literally is all this recruitment comes down to.
Yeah, and if I'm being honest, like the things that I've heard a little bit about it is as we're getting close, it's almost 6 o'clock, so the stream is about to come on. But some of the things that I've heard is that initially Braylon, and this is all hearsay, this is all third party, so this isn't straight from Braylon or anybody in his direct camp. But people have said that, initially there was a little trepidation about leaving home. And I know that, and I don't think anyone understands the appeal of going to your hometown school as much as a guy who grew up in Connecticut, although I have since moved away. But what I can tell you is that being a hometown kid and going to your like state's school that has so much pride in that you probably grew up watching, because I can be honest, and I know Indiana fans will kind of make fun of this, but our history isn't as long as yours, but it's more impressive in the respect of, and this is no disrespect, that I started watching because I'm 43 years old, this UConn basketball team from 1986. So from 1986 on, this team has been a power and has had the ability to win national championships. And so that's something that I know is powerful. And that's why I'm kind of shocked that Braylon is potentially choosing UConn, in my opinion.
Look, I've said it several times. I think UConn, the men's program, we know the success of the women's program, but in the last 25 years, I think UConn's been the most dominant men's program because of the consistency in national championships. Now, in terms of longevity, blue blood status, yeah, Indiana's, of course, up there in top 5, top 7 programs in all of college basketball. But recent memory, recent history has not been good to us, which is why we're trying to go get kids like Braylon Mullins and say, hey, stay home, help the rebuild, help us get back to being the top dog in college basketball.
So I don't know if you saw that, but Charles here says he's going to UConn because I know his girlfriend. Thanks, Charles, for the breaking news. Really appreciate that.
We love it. Hey, man, sources everywhere, man. That's how it works. I actually spoke with his cat the other day, and he told me that Indiana was his favorite color in red. So I don't know.
That's true. It could be.
Could be. You never know. Yeah. And so I will say this, though. I know we're counting down. I got it on my second monitor too. We got about 30 seconds or so. But Indiana fans are on edge. For those watching on the stream on Locked On Hoosiers right now, we appreciate you being here. And they're on edge because they don't want to miss another one. It is basically what this comes down to. Marino hurt, Reeby hurt, Harrelson hurt. Mullins would hurt. I'm getting that out there for UConn fans. If you haven't seen what Indiana fans have been going through recently, they're hoping this goes the right way. Yeah.
Trust me, UConn fans have seen it. I'm going to go to a quick break. I'm going to go to a quick break, and when we come back, we'll have the announcement likely coming up. All right, guys. LinkedIn is stop shop for if you're looking for better than anybody. If you think about what LinkedIn is like, it is a place where you can get all of your small business needs. 76% of people look at LinkedIn. 86% of small businesses find their talent on LinkedIn. And I literally do this on a regular basis. Post jobs, find great candidates. I found 3 great candidates in 24 hours when I posted a job just last week. They're in their final interviews next week. Please check out LinkedIn Jobs to post a job for free. Go to linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free. It makes a real difference. And absolutely check that out. Check out LinkedIn for all of your hiring needs. LinkedIn.com/lockedoncollege. Check them out. All right, let's bring Jacob back. What a terrible promo, but that's okay. LinkedIn is a great place to find jobs.
You get the gist.
Yeah, you get it. It's a live stream. They already got two. They already got 2 ads today with 2 of my shows, so we're good.
True.
Sorry, guys. We're
flying in all over the place, man. We got all sorts of people in here. I love it.
They're at Greenfield Central High. You got Braylon and his mom and dad there.
It's a great turnout for him. I mean, and I love seeing that too. You see all the family members and teammates and everything. That is really cool to see for Braylon. And they'll do their whole big reveal, right? See if they come up with anything different. Looks like they're all just gonna have a t-shirt on underneath the jacket.
They all have the zip down. If you're watching us and you don't have the stream up, we're kind of giving you the play-by-play here.
Yeah, that's what you need. So, and I'll say this too. All the interviews I've seen with Braylon and heard from Braylon, he just seems like a stand-up kid. He really does. Just seems like a really, really nice dude. He's got his head on his shoulder straight. So good for him. Yeah.
I thought that was a good comment.
I think so too. Yeah,
thank you, Gary.
Thanks, Gary. Here we go. And I like to, I'll give credit to 247 Sports. I've watched a handful of their recruitments in the last couple of weeks. I mean, they'll ask a couple questions, they'll let the kid talk, and then boom, they get after it. Yeah, they get right after it, man. They don't drag it out super, super long. So we'll see see what Braylon ends up wanting to do. Yeah, shout out to all my people over in the Locked On Hoosiers chat. We got a bunch of them in there. I got UConn people in the Locked On Hoosiers chat. Mark, what do we do?
Of course you do. Listen, UConn fans are savages, dude. Like that's one. If there's one thing I will tell you, UConn fans will get in people's mentions. That's for sure.
Yep, it's crazy. Yeah, lots of people have tuned in to watch. So
right now, dude, he's getting ready to announce.
Here we go.
Hold still.
Yep, it's coming. I promise, it's coming. Yep. Then, yeah, we're gonna react to it whether he goes to UConn or Indiana. We may have one of the craziest reactions of the world if it goes a completely different direction. This video could break the internet, Mark.
I have to address this before Braylon does this, and because I said savages, he says he means classless. I've seen Indiana fans wishing Liam McNeely to tear his ACL because he went to UConn. So let's relax on classless, okay? Take it easy.
No comment. Yeah, nothing. That's not cool. We don't want that.
No, it's terrible.
Yeah, we don't want that. That's not cool. Well,
right.
I will say this too. I know Roman Tomashoff and Locked On Huskies, we're doing a crossover later this week for the football game. And he said, man, I got Indiana people in my comments. They're coming at me already. It's crazy. And that's for football.
Yep. We just got a delay.
Uh-oh.
There we go. No, we're good. I thought the internet was going to crash.
Oh, man.
Like, oh, no.
I'll carry if I have to. I would totally carry if I have to. But yeah, it looks like what? Mom and dad, siblings that look just like him that are younger.
Oh, yeah. Younger brothers.
Yep. Which, I mean, heck, in 5 years, we'll be sitting here talking about them, I'm sure.
All right, here it is.
Here we go.
Woo! It's UConn, baby. Showing the UConn shirt. Gotta love it. Man. Dad's rocking the old school letters with the big Husky. I gotta get Josh a home field. I gotta get Josh one of these. I gotta get Braylon's dad one of these. Maybe we gotta get Braylon a couple of these too. The whole family.
There it is. Yep.
I'm sorry, Indiana fans.
Man. Yeah, that's what we feared, unfortunately, right? My show today was called Heartbreak Again, and that's what it was. It was heartbreak again. Yeah, he picks UConn. And look, for anybody that followed the recruitment, for anybody that was keeping up with it on our shows or other places, I mean, this was the feeling, right? This was the understanding from in the camp, around the camp of Braylon Mullins was UConn was the team to beat in really the last week or so, Mark. I mean, I really do think up to a week ago or so, this was still an open thing. And then it just seemed like, man, UConn just slammed the door like they've done time and time again. So congratulations to UConn. You guys got a heck of a player, man.
Yeah, I mean, and let's break this down, man. Like, because we've both talked about how much this would mean to each program, and I'll come to you first because it's fresh. The questions on the rundown are if it's UConn, how big of a blow is it to Indiana? Answer that for me now, and I don't mean that to rub salt in the wounds. No. Although people in the chat are probably going to do that anyway, but as a host perspective that covers this team daily, we know about this grind, doing this on a daily basis. What do you think this means to this team? Because in all intents and purposes, Indiana is going to have a talented team next year. They did great in the transfer portal, but why do you feel like they're not able to grab these kind of like tent pole recruits that are freshmen that they can kind of build off of?
Well, I think it's been a struggle I know it's been a struggle for the last handful of years to keep Indiana talent in Indiana, first of all, and then not allow them to go to places like Purdue, right? I mean, it's been tough to get Indiana kids to come to Indiana. And that's not something 20, 30, 40 years ago that they ever had to worry about because Indiana was one of those places that it just recruited itself. But there just seems to be, from the people I talk to, and I know the fans have addressed this on Locked On Hoosiers, there is just a lot of concern with Mike Woodson. That's the concern is, can he be the coach that Indiana needs? He's an old school coach who's coached the same way his entire career. And that seems to be the very vocalized concern is, can Mike Woodson find a new rhythm? Can he find this new offense? Can he adjust and adapt to how the game has changed since even when he was coaching with the New York Knicks? I mean, that's the concern for fans. And it seems like that's the concern for players like Braylon Mullins, who you watched the offense last year at Indiana. The guard play was atrocious. It was bad. And sure, we had injury problems, but it was a come down the floor, play half court offense, dump it down low, and let the big guys go to work. And that was pretty much it. And let's be real, Mark, a top 15 guard in the country doesn't want to go play in a system like that. You've got to find a way to change that. Now, I do think Indiana's done a really good job in preaching and selling, hey, we're changing that. And I think you're going to see that with our guard transfers that came in. But it's a see it to believe it mode. And until you find it and see it happening in Bloomington inside of Assembly Hall, I think it's a tough risk to take.
No, I agree. Let me ask you this question because I deal with this too. But I have to ask you this because and I'm not trying to alienate you or your fans, but care to respond to that?
UConn is no good. They are a joke. That is false.
Laverne and Shirley, apparently.
Wow, that's a bold statement for back-to-back champions. I did have somebody in my comments that asked if Indiana and UConn could switch coaches. So if you want to decide, if you want to ponder on that one for a second, Mark, you can give me your answer later if need be.
No, I think I'm going to pass on Mike Woodson. I have too many Knicks friends, having grown up in Connecticut, and see their IG and Facebook and Twitter posts to last me a generation of Mike Woodson. Yeah. Let me ask you a question because I really am curious about this. If Dusty May was the coach of Indiana, is Braylon Mullins a Hoosier?
That's tough. That's tough because Dusty May is a really, really good coach. And I think he's going to make Michigan a competitor this season. I think they've got the talent to be legit in the Big Ten. I'll still say no just because that's still a risk, right? Because can Dusty May do it at this level, right? Which, I mean, I think that's a kind of a bad question just because he did it on a smaller scale. So why wouldn't he be able to do it on a bigger scale? I just think UConn has got so much to sell, and it's so hard to convince them to not go to UConn because, man, I've had people tell me if UConn calls me, I'm going immediately. And it's hard to go against that. I'm sure you've heard that a ton. And so I don't think so. I think he would still, Indiana would have been in it. I just don't know if Dusty May in year one would have been enough to outweigh UConn. But I'm curious from your perspective in terms of what Braylon brings to UConn. I mean, he's another huge recruit that you guys add to the class. He has a chance to, continue being one of the legendary guards that have come through UConn. What does it mean for the Huskies to bring in Braylon Mullins?
I think it's a continuation of a pipeline. I think one of the things that Dan Hurley has made very clear lately is that he is not interested in transactional relationships. So while he will bring in a Steph Castle, while he will bring in a Liam McNeely, he will bring in likely one of those every class, but he won't bring in 5. And if you think of the guys that he brought in, I don't think anyone thinks Darius Adams is a one and done. I don't think maybe Eric Riba because of his size and positional versatility. But there still is a lot of work to be done there. And future reference, he is coming on Locked on UConn. So for the people that are in my chat, be on the lookout for that show. I think for Braylon, he is the type of player that could be if he comes in 25, 26 and is transformed by this Dan Hurley offense with already these incredible skill sets to then potentially be the type of player that he could be. There is a possibility where he could go from Greenfield, Indiana to UConn to the pros in 1 year. Do I think that's going to happen? I don't. I think he stays for 2 years minimum. 3 years is probably a lot because he's got so much talent, and I think he's a blue chip prospect. So I think he's probably going to be a 2-year guy. And there's been plenty of those. Donovan Clingan comes to mind just recently. And I also think, too, like if you think about some of the players that stayed at UConn that didn't transfer, Solo Ball, Jalen Stewart, Jaden Ross, that were in a very highly touted class last year with Steph Castle, they all want to stay because they know what this Dan Hurley system can do for them. and they're just waiting for their turn to kind of to explode. So if Braylon doesn't come in and start right away, which is honestly highly unlikely because of the guys they already have,
Sure.
and then he can stick around for a year, play like kind of that 6-man, 7th man on the roll on the bench, and then have his turn as a sophomore to really star in this offense. So I think it's a long-term play. Indiana may have offered more NIL money, and I know they did from sources that I know and I trust. But as far as UConn goes, as you mentioned, they just have so much going for them from a coaching perspective, the culture. They're a trusted program right now, and I can't say the same thing about Indiana at the moment, and that's just where we're at.
Yeah, and the good thing is for Indiana, right? A lot of my Locked On Hoosiers fans and just Hoosiers fans in general have looked at what we did just a few months ago in the transfer portal, right?
Sure.
Because we just brought in the #1 ranked portal class. You got 3 starters out of there, 2 very good bench players who are going to elevate the shooting game of this team. And so, if there is a bright side in this era of college basketball, is you don't have to dominate the high school recruiting rankings because you can go get guys out of the portal. Now, I'm a very vocal person when it comes to, I think the high school rankings are still the way to go to build the foundation of a program. I still think guys like Braylon Mullins or even Trent Sisley that Indiana has currently in the recruiting class, those guys are important, man, because you bring them in and you just keep the pipeline there and you can keep them for 2, 3, 4 years, and then they can become really, really good players and maybe eventually get to the NBA. But those are the foundation of your program. And you can't rely on the transfer portal every single year because everybody's in there, right? Everybody's got their line in the water and they're looking for the next big fish out of the portal. Just because you were successful one year doesn't mean you're going to be successful another year. So if Indiana goes that route where it's like, okay, we're just going to bring in 1 or 2 high school recruits and just rely on the portal the rest of the time, I don't like that mindset. But if you keep losing battles to UConn and Notre Dame in basketball, we may not have a choice.
No, and I don't disagree. I think for me, the one thing that's underrated when you talk about the portal in terms of, or not the portal, but the kind of how they rank these classes is, and I've said this from the start, because when we got Ada Mahaney and we got Terrace Reed Jr., especially when we got Terrace Reed Jr., people were like, oh, I mean, Terrace Reed, who cares? You know, like whatever. And I think what people need to understand is Dan Hurley targets specific players. So if he's targeting you, there's a reason for it. It's not because he feels like you were the best player in the class, according to, as he calls it, outside entities. It's his evaluation.
Sure.
So I think at this point, we can trust Dan Hurley and his evaluations. So that's my biggest thing is, it really, to me, the fact that they turn their attention to Braylon, that they turn their attention to Eric Riva and Darius Adams and kind of backburnered Malik Thomas and others really shows what this team is about and what they're really trying to do at UConn, which is have a consistent pipeline of young talent so they don't have to do portal as much, because Dan Hurley hates it. He hates the portal.
Yeah.
Hates it more than probably any coach in the country.
As a lot of coaches do. I think that's why you see guys like Coach K are gone. I think Roy Williams with being gone, Jay Wright being gone. I mean, I think a lot of those older school coaches, there's like, to heck with this. I don't want to deal with transfer portal and paying players and all that. I mean, they don't want to deal with it. And so if you can find a way to master it, then good for you.
Let me ask you a question, because that's a great point. And I kind of, I always push back on this. And I feel like those guys have used NIL in the transfer portal as an excuse to get out of the game because it's a little too hard than what they initially thought. Because for years, whether we go back to Bobby Knight or Jim Calhoun on our side, and I'm not saying either of these guys did this, but you essentially have a scenario where you got a guy in your program and they can't go anywhere. And if they do, they have to sit out. So what does that player do? It doesn't give them the freedom to be like, hey, man, this system ain't working for me. And to me, that is why it's so impressive that Daniel Hurley has able to keep guys in his program. He had one guy transfer this year, Apostolos Romelu, who went to Richmond, who wasn't going to play this year anyway. So let me, in that respect, do you feel like that's kind of a crutch that some of these guys are using? We just had Tony Bennett retire. I kind of thought that was fishy too. I mean, I
very much so.
I feel like a lot of these guys are using it as a crutch. Like, NIL is also very overblown. If you talk to anybody that's an NIL agent or anybody that deals with NIL, when you hear these numbers like AJ DeBonsa getting $4 million, that's not how much he's truly getting. Those are so overblown. Like I heard these crazy numbers that Indiana was giving to Braylon. A lot of it is BS. And so it's really about the culture and the team. These kids all get paid now. And let me tell you a dark secret. They all got paid before too. It's just out in the open now.
Yes, that's exactly right. It's like, and I think that may be the problem too, Mark, is like, okay, nobody's an idiot. We're not going to just sweep it under the rug. They were all being paid. And it was, man, you remember college basketball was dirty for a long, long time. And it's still not good. It got cleaned up a little bit when the FBI got involved, but there for a long time, it was really, really bad during the prime days of Coach K and Roy Williams and those types of jokers. I mean, man, college basketball was in a bad spot. But I think what the reason they're using that as an excuse now is now it's all level. Now it's all fair. Board. Now everybody has the same sort of opportunities. Now, depending on how much money you have and things like that, I get it. But the playing field has been leveled. And there's no doubt in my mind it's made the job harder to go and get a guy like Braylon Mullins. But all you got to do is just get him. You either get him or you don't. And now you either go find somebody else or you go to the transfer portal. Or if you're an old school coach and you don't want to deal with it anymore, you blame it on that and you get out, you take your money and you live a happy life. But I do think it has made it harder for sure. But overall, yeah, I mean, it's an excuse, I guess. But you either adapt or you get out. There's really no other options.
For sure. I have to call out one of your guys here. Who's probably, I think he's saying that you're weak, and I think I have to call him out here. Yeah, we get it, man. But I also wanted to do this because I think it's really fun to engage with other programs. So,
okay. I mean, it's a joint stream, man. Sorry, sorry, man. I mean,
sorry, bro.
Sorry, brother.
You don't have to watch. There's plenty of other people on.
I appreciate you. Appreciate you being in here. No, we've had a ton of people watching, man. It's been a lot of fun. I know it didn't go Hoosiers fans' way. And again, for those that watched Locked on Hoosiers the last couple of days, you probably got that vibe from me, and I kind of told you that's how it was going to go. But hey, man, recruits can shock the nation at any time. And even though Indiana didn't land him, it's fun to collaborate with you for the first time and talk about UConn and get an insight on them because, man, they're doing great things and you guys are going to be a really, really good team and we expect to be good as well. So you just never know what's going to happen, man.
Absolutely. Hey, I'm not even going to go to a break. I'm just going to throw FanDuel on here and tell everybody about the promo so we get that out of the way. If anybody is not already a FanDuel subscriber, you can do it now. You bet new account, $200 in bonus bets if you bet $5 on FanDuel.com, America's #1 sportsbook. Go check that out. This program and many others are sponsored by FanDuel and other wonderful sponsors like LinkedIn and Game Time and others. But definitely check out FanDuel if you aren't already doing so. Before we go, man, where do you think the ceiling is for Indiana this year?
Overall on the men's season? I think top three. Well, I guess ceiling is making a deep run in the tournament. And I think it's really hard to say championship or bust in college basketball because of how, and somebody actually gave me this piece of advice the other day, and I'm actually taking it and running with it. It's really hard to say championship or bust because of how the playoff or the postseason format in college basketball is, right? The NCAA tournament is on crack. I mean, it is wild because it's so hard to win and you've got to win back to back to back in the format that it is. And you're playing teams you've never seen before. Like it's extremely hard to win a championship, which is why it's so great that, and crazy that UConn has done it twice back to back. Right. And so I think for Indiana, the ceiling this year is make the tournament, something we didn't do a year ago, and make a run. I think if you make to the Sweet 16, at that point, that's when you get to reset, you give yourself a shot, and everybody has a chance to win a national championship. So that's the expectation. Ceiling, I think their national title good. I think their national title talented. But whether you get there or not, there's a lot of other factors there. But I think Sweet 16 is a minimum for this team, especially if Mike Woodson wants to keep the fan base anywhere near them and him, because they're already calling for his job. You see it in the comments right now, man. They're blaming Woodson for Braylon not being here right now. So you want to keep the fan base somewhat happy, make it to the Sweet 16. What about UConn? What are you guys feeling this year?
I think it's Final Four or bust in terms of the talent that we have. Danny Hurley had a great comment today at Big East Media Day, which was today. I was very busy this afternoon. He said he told Matt Norlander on Ion College Basketball Podcast that UConn should have been preseason number one, not because of the people they returned back, but because, and I truly really appreciate this comment because he's finally explained it other than just being like, we're number one. He's like, I look at it like a heavyweight champion. He's like, we've won back-to-back national champions. He's like, even if a heavyweight champion is staggered in a heavyweight fight, if he gets knocked, around, it's typical that he has to get knocked out for you to get the belt. You don't just hand over the number one to another team just because they might be better looking. And so I agree with him 100%. I was hammering on the table about that. UConn should have been preseason number one just because this doesn't happen often. Like it doesn't. And he's also had two different teams multiple times. This wasn't Duke in 91-92 or Florida in 06-07. These are two entirely separate teams, and now they're doing the exact same thing. So for the AP to not give the benefit of the doubt to get them number one and keep that trajectory, I thought was a little short-sighted. But it's been since Duke in, I think, 92 for a preseason number one to win the title. So it's probably a good omen that they start at 3, and then we'll see what happens. I think they're obviously championship capable on the offensive side. The defense is where they're going to have to really shore up without the loss of Klingon and Castle, and Tristan Newton, and Cam Spencer, who was quite the crafty steelsmanship guard. So yeah, lots of holes, but I think they have the class and the coach obviously to get them to the promised land again.
I think so. I mean, I think they're good enough. They're extremely talented enough, and we know Hurley's a good enough coach. I mean, here we go again. That's the difference, right? That's the difference in a program like UConn and the question marks around Indiana. Can Woody figure it out? Can Woody turn it around? Can he adapt, adjust, and overcome? If he does, Indiana's going to become relevant. Again, Indiana's going to get back to the promised land, and we'll be good for a long time. If not, we could have a coaching search on our hands.
Absolutely, man. Well, listen, why don't we end it here? I really appreciate you doing this. I know some Indiana fans were a little upset, probably a lot upset. I know a lot of UConn fans are really pumped about this. Yep, a lot. I'm trying to soften the blow. But listen, I really appreciate you, Jacob. Keep if you haven't subscribed already, do it. If even my UConn fans subscribe to Jacob's show, I'm sure you're gonna get a lot of good content because listen, there aren't too many programs with the history that Indiana and UConn have collectively. So for us to come together and do a show, I think is really great. And absolutely. I hope this year, maybe we meet in the tournament. We can do the same thing. I know that did the same thing last year with the Alabama host in the Final Four. So if that happens again, I'll be happy to do it. And maybe next time we'll make a deal with your Indiana fans. Next time you host it, so it's all Locked On Indiana and people don't freak out about some of the stuff that goes on. Sound good?
Yeah, I'll agree to that. I think it would have been okay if Braylon picked Indiana. I think they would have let all the other stuff go. But
I think they would have been all right. Right?
I think so too. No, but I appreciate you, man. This has been a lot of fun. Wrong result, but hey, this is always good when we can get Locked On people together and start talking ball.
Absolutely, guys. Well, listen, I always say this, but I won't do my traditional sign off because I don't want to piss off any more Indiana fans. All I'm going to say is we're happy to have Braylon Mullins. We're sorry for Indiana fans, and go UConn, go Hoosiers.
That's right.
Have a good rest of your night, guys.